Latin America as a concept is a great way to organize a conference, a speech, a talk, or a book, and that is where it stops. There are no similarities that are worth exploring in payment systems in Latin America. Really, one has to talk about 17 or 18 different countries with very different challenges, rules, regulations, products, things that work and things that don't. And that's going to be my starting point. I'm going to ask the panelists each to give us a description of their best and their worst experience in specific countries in the region. This should start to give you a flavor for just how different things can be in countries which superficially can look quite similar. So I start on my far right with Jens. Perhaps if you could tell us about your best Latin American experience and your worst, and then we'll move along the panel.
This up a bit now. Okay, thanks, Paul. It's a pleasure to be here today, and as you rightly said, I am with a company called PaySafeCard. To some of you, this company might be known. We're a prepaid solution. We're a prepaid online cash-based system. We operate currently across 28 countries. That's most of Europe. But also we do have several entities in the Latin American market. So from what I can tell you today about Latin America is we've had a very, very easy and very successful entry into one country only, whereby all the other countries that we're currently operating in and we're trying to launch into in the near future have presented us with all sorts of challenges and problems. So the easy country I'm talking about would be Mexico. Mexico, as we all know, is bordering to the US. That has its pros and cons. But if you look at Latin America, by every single country, Mexico is by far the easiest to approach. It has a rather regulated system in terms of the financial services, the financial processes in place. The institutions you can approach to set up your industry. It has a very vibrant currency flow outside the country. So we have established players down there which already focus on money remittances and international money transfer. So there are a few processes and things set up in Mexico that makes it easy for an international company to launch their services and operate on the back of these existing processes and infrastructure. So what we've done in Mexico is the way we operate, we have physical outlets, our distribution partners that resell our prepaid vouchers. It's just a card, like a disposable piece of paper. So what you do is you pay cash in one of those retail locations, like a 7-Eleven store. They issue a 16-digit card number to you on a piece of paper, and you can use this amount in full or in parts to make a purchase and pay for it online. The remaining balance stays on the card. If there is no balance, you can just throw away the card. So it's very simple. It's one way only. We don't do payouts. And when we entered into Mexico, we found out there are similar services already, especially using the same distribution network as we do, like OXXO, 7-Eleven, Extra Markets. So we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to find a certain niche that we were addressing with our product and a certain clientele to use our product, which is not yet addressed by the others, which is in particular online gaming. So we found this very easy to be done. We had to open a local entity to be able to collect cash in the market because you physically collect it in the region. Then you need the banking network basically to settle your partners and merchants internationally. Most of the flows that we currently send out goes to Europe, but we do have some partners outside Europe that we facilitate international transfers to as well. A challenge here is, like usual, the reliability of your partners that actually collect the cash on behalf of you. So there is a certain risk that one of your retailers or one of your shop owners goes bankrupt, or he just takes the money and run. So taking out credit insurance is a very important part of the business down there in Mexico. There is always a certain risk in running your operations in Mexico, but credit risk is one of the big ones. So as you can imagine, if you put insurance onto a payment process, it adds to the cost, which subsequently adds to the processing fee that a merchant incurs when he works with services like us. Now, nevertheless, when we launched in Mexico, it took us about 14 days to set the whole system up. We've done some work beforehand to get the distribution right and get the partner contract signed and everything. But really, after 14 days, we saw the first transactions coming in. So people actually realized when they went to a 7-Eleven, there is this new prepaid card, and they found out very quickly on the internet, going through the paysafecard.com website, where they can use it actually in Mexico locally. So up until then, and it's only a few months now, we have grown the volume every day. I'd say, and some days we see 100% growth in the payment volume that we're processing in Mexico. So it's been a huge success. So cash-based system in Mexico, relatively easy to set up, relatively quickly being accepted due to the products already in the market by other players. So that was one of the good experiences. The bad, and that goes very quickly because there's not much to say, has been Argentina. Argentina was a good setup for us as well. It took us a long time and negotiations to get all the agreements in place with the national banks, with our commercial banks. We had to send up an entity again. We appointed a managing director to run the operations locally. That was all required by the regulators and by the authorities. Now we've put this in place and we started processing, and that was the nice part. After 3 days, Argentina changed one of their regulations, one of their laws, and they passed a bill which basically prohibits the transfer of a certain amount of money, up to a certain amount of money outside the country. So Argentina at this day basically decided that their currency is internationally not transferable. We weren't aware of this change beforehand. It struck us basically, and our business was in question. So when we started processing, the total amount we could, and we still can, channel out of the country is limited to $250,000 per year. Now, as you can imagine, for a payments business, having international merchants that they need to settle in all different kind of countries, that is impossible. It just doesn't work. We've been processing for 3 days, and we hit the 250,000. So we basically stopped processing after that. So we can still do, and we still do, local business up to today, and that works fine. We see very good conversion rates. We have conversion rates 90% plus. What that means, I can tell you later if you're interested on the site. But we can settle internally on a domestic bank account. So if you have operations in Argentina and you want to work with a company like us, that works. So you have to have a local bank account, you have to have a local entity, and we can do business. But for international merchant, as we have 85% of our merchants are in an international setup, Argentina has been a big disappointment. It's simple as that.
Okay. The best and the worst of times?
Can you actually hear me? Hello? Okay. So first of all, thanks for coming here. I'm unfortunately, or maybe it's okay, not Ralph Wenzel. I'm Matthias Adler, so I'm heading the sales department, and Ralph couldn't make it, he is sick, so I was informed yesterday that I can share with you what I know about South America. Moneybookers, as you know, and you will ask me why Skrill, but we can do that later, is the leading e-wallet in the gaming industry, and we have 16.6 million users globally using our wallet system to transfer money P2P to operators and to use our withdrawal functionality, cash out with our Moneybookers MasterCard all their funds if they want to. And it's been an extremely successful last year. Also for the affiliate side of things, as you might know, we won the award yesterday, which makes me very proud. Which brings me to the subject, what are we going to do in South America, how are we going to do that? We are present with 5 deposit methods. We have all the credit cards, we have Diners, MasterCard and Visa, which work okay. We have an international bank transfer and of course our famous wallet. That you can have in every state of South America. And we all know it's a very fragmented market and might not be the optimal setup just to go there with this basic portfolio that everybody should have and use. Of course, Moneybookers is looking to localize a lot more. So going forward, and I think I should talk about the good experiences first, right? The good experience is that we are growing massively without having invested a lot into marketing or into really pushing for South America. We have one Spanish-speaking guy in my team who's really going out there now actively, and that's a new thing, so it's definitely one of our focus markets, but again, it will take some time to really make a lot of money there. That's my personal opinion, simply because it's underbanked, it's, you know, the approval rates for credit cards are not awesome, but okay, and regulatory-wise, you have to really go into details in each and every state to see what you can do there. The good experience was I was running the affiliate program last year, and working with South American affiliates was a pleasure because you can see there is a strong demand in knowing how I can push my money in and out. And most options there are good at pushing money in, but then again, if you're a gambler, you want to cash out. So you need a wallet, actually, in my opinion, to have a safe way to get your money fast and quick back. If not, you will wait for a couple of days to get it back on your bank account, and on your bank account you might have people looking into your movements. And well, that doesn't happen with us. So working with certain affiliates was really a fascinating thing, since we're not really explaining our product very well in Spanish. That's my opinion on our website. But the affiliates can do that. That's their job, and they do it extremely well. You could see suddenly a spike in signups, and we continue to grow there massively through that channel, of course. And of course, you always have people that get to know Moneybookers in one way or the other. And then again, you can easily, if you're a poker player, do a P2P transaction, which takes you 1 second with your English fellows that are playing with you. So you know the money moves, and it makes a lot of sense then to have a cheap and fast way to do that. Bad experiences, I unfortunately don't know about any bad experiences. Might be the case that going forward, guys, I have to tell you that we're going to integrate Boleto and Dinero, because we know these are the two options that really do work already. Okay, it's not instant, but yes, it is working. It's a good way to put the cash in our system and then move it. It's gonna happen this year, not too far away from now. I don't give you a precise date, because then again, you could say I promised too much. The bad experience might have been that, yeah, we're still struggling to make the customer experience when using these methods as streamlined as we do it with all the other methods, yeah?
Before I describe Ucash, can I just check how many of you have actually heard of Ucash? Hands up if you have. Okay, so probably about 60 or 70%, so that's good. I'll keep it brief then for those of you that haven't. Ucash is similar to PaySafeCard in that it's a prepaid cash voucher product. The main difference in terms of the actual product feature is that each Ucash voucher is a unique code. So once you use that voucher, it can never be used again. Whereas with PaySafe, as Jens described, you pay down a balance against a card number. We operate a global e-money network in over 50 countries now, across 6 continents, including Latin America. We've been live in Latin America for about 18 months. The first country that we went live in was Uruguay. We're also live in Bolivia, in Mexico as well. And yesterday, actually, we went live in Argentina, so we can talk about that a little bit more later on. So Latin America for us is a big part of our expansion plan. I guess coming to what's been good and what's been not so good. On the good side, I think we've found a slightly different model to Jens and PaySafeGuard in that we work with local partners to create effective joint ventures in each market that we create. So we work with a company called Efectivo or Rocalix in Argentina, Uruguay and Bolivia, and we work with other partners in Colombia and in Mexico. And that local partnership for us has been critical because we don't try and manage each country from London. We try and manage each country locally so that we use local knowledge and understand the local regulations in each market. And that's been particularly effective, I think, in Uruguay. We went there first really as a bit of a test to make sure that we could understand the local Latin American culture. And I think we learned very quickly, to your point, Paul, at the beginning, every market is very different. But Uruguay really took up for us very quickly, so we were extremely pleased with the progress. And we also delivered the voucher through physical stores. Therefore, we expanded to Bolivia, to Mexico, etc., and latterly to Argentina. And I think that's also been for us a very positive experience. We found a local partner that we do believe has found a way with us to get money out of Argentina, so we're excited about that. I think probably the experience that's been the most negative, similarly to Jens, is that in Brazil at the moment we haven't been able to get live yet. We're desperate to do so, but it's a slow process. Obviously there's some issues about getting money out of the country. We've got some great local partnerships there, and we hope to crack that one very soon, but we haven't been able to do so.
Okay, this is an open session. Are there any questions arising from the floor so far? Is there anyone with a... Yes, go ahead, please.
Hi, my name's Breen. I'm a UK affiliate, but I'm looking at Latin America at the moment. So, Moneybookers, you said something about Dinero and another product. I missed what it was.
Boleto Bancario.
Yeah. Sorry?
Boleto Bancario was the other.
That was all I wanted to know.
All right.
Well done.
Okay, is there an interest in the room in knowing about Boleto Bancario? Put your hand up if you know what it is. Okay, I'll take 2 minutes and describe it, and then I'll ask one of the other chaps to describe Dinero Mail for you. Boleto Bancario is an electronic invoicing system in Brazil. It is the single most used method of making non-face-to-face payments in Brazil. It is completely unique to the country, and it works fantastically well. The only problem is if you have a successful sales campaign collecting money via Bancario, you then have Brazilian currency in your bank account, and one of the biggest issues in Brazil is getting your money out. What happens with a Boleto Bancario is the merchant issues an invoice. It can be electronic, it can be on paper, it can be physical, to his remote customer via the internet, but he sends the detail of the invoice directly to his bank, who issues the invoice either electronically or physically with a unique code number on it and a barcode. The recipient of the invoice can go into any bank or credit union in Brazil, any telephone store, any one of a vast network of lottery stores or large supermarkets, pay the invoice in cash. The code is typed in or the barcode is scanned in, and the money magically appears in the merchant's bank account between 2 and 5 days later, depending on how remote the bank is from the central bank. The invoice can be registered with the bank that issues it, and it can have penalties and discounts on it. So you can have a 2% discount for paying within 10 days, you can have a 5% penalty for paying after a month. You can do all the things that a proprietary accounts receivable system would do through the bank. Even better, the Central Bank of Brazil maintains a registry of registered boletos, and if somebody doesn't pay to, the bank system actually intervenes to try to force him to pay it. As your list of unpaid boletos grows, you lose the ability to rent cars, rent apartments, open bank accounts, issue checks, and eventually walk freely into the street. The downside of Boleto is that everything is registered. Every single person in Brazil has a CPF number, and every single company in Brazil has a CNPJ number, and those numbers are always used to issue any boleto. Therefore, the central bank has a record of every payment, who it went to, and who it came from. And it is a very, very significant source of tax control in Brazil, and growingly so as database management improves. It is, however, very familiar to Brazilians. It's the number one way of collecting money, but it has a number of downsides associated with it. Perhaps you'd describe Dinero Mail? Yeah.
Is this okay? Dinero Mail is a Argentinian-based online payment service provider. They provide two kind of different services. One being a pure payment gateway service, where they actually combine a number of local payment methods within one gateway, one payment cashier page, if you like. There are several local payment options for Argentina, for Brazil, for Chile, for Colombia, and Mexico. So these could be cash-based systems like our product, or the UCash product, or any of the other existing local prepaid cash-based products. It could be international credit cards, or it could be national credit cards. Lots of the cards issued in those countries are still being considered national cards or domestic cards, which operate in their very own logic and very own way. So in this part of its business, Dinero Mail is basically a payment option aggregator, an online PSP, where you can send your customer to, and he chooses from a wide range of different payment options. He chooses the one that he can make a payment with. The other side of the business for Dinero Mail is a classic stored value business, which basically is a wallet, just like Moneybookers or Neteller. Basically, people can use any of those options that are available on the PSP side and transfer funds through a national card into the Dinero Mail account, which is then stored electronically, and then they can use these funds and send these funds on to any connected merchant. So to be able to work with Dinero Mail and accept funds being transferred from the Dinero Mail account, you have to have a technical integration with this company. There are different ways of doing this. I've gone through the remote exercise of working with them once, successfully, I might say, and the integration has been proven to be quite manageable. That was quite a good experience. Dinero Mail is a young company. It's been around for about 2 years now, and they're being financed by private equity companies and by an entity, an equity entity of the World Bank. So by saying this, that means they're being very well connected as well, locally, but also throughout the region, and they might have possibilities that other companies do not have, because they rely on this big World Bank network that they're working with and working from. So that's in short Dinero Mail, as far as I know.
Okay. Within the context of the discussions we've had so far, 5 countries have been repeatedly mentioned. They are Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Peru, and Mexico, and there was a brief reference to Bolivia. I think it's important for anyone that came here to learn to understand there is a fundamental difference between the 2 East Coast countries of South America and the West Coast and Mexican group. That is that Brazil and Argentina have closed economies. Their currency is not freely negotiable on world markets. It is extremely complicated to transfer money out of those currencies, and those currencies can't be sold outside the country unless you're involved in some sort of swap arrangement. So any consideration of a payment mechanism for Brazil and Argentina separately is totally different to looking at a payment mechanism for Chile, Peru, and Mexico. So for instance, 99% of Brazilians who have a credit card can only use it to buy from a Brazilian merchant inside Brazil. 100% of Mexicans who have a credit card can use it to buy from whoever they want in whatever currency they want anywhere in the world. Chileans are free to spend their money wherever they want, and Peruvians are free to spend their money wherever they want. Mexico has a regulated gaming sector. Peru has an open gaming sector. Chile has a regulated gaming sector, but there is so much grey that it's essentially an open market. Internet gaming in Argentina is largely believed to be illegal everywhere, And internet gaming in Brazil today, I would say, is clearly illegal everywhere. Nevertheless, Brazil has the largest informal gambling product known to man. Okay? There are more people and a higher percentage of Brazilians gamble on a weekly basis than any other country on the planet. But it's all done by cash and a system of runners in local markets and stores. So the culture is there, the opportunity is there, but the mechanisms aren't there. Now, as a footnote to that list of 5 countries, is there any other country in the region where somebody in the room has a particular interest in gaining information? Yes. Ecuador and Panama. Okay. Which of those countries are you from? Okay. Any others that we could add to that list? I'm sorry? Colombia? Okay. Anything else? Right. So what I'll do is I'll ask the panelists, do you have any experience with Ecuador, Colombia, or Panama, and anything to offer to our audience on those? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, a little bit of experience in Colombia. So Colombia is a market where we currently distribute Ucash. It's a market that we've gone into very carefully, as you would understand from some of the points you've made earlier on. And currently I think it's fair to say that our largest sector actually from our Colombian issued vouchers is voice over IP rather than online gaming. But it's a market that we see expanding very rapidly. Internet connections in Colombia are expanding exponentially fast. The population of Colombia is one of the highest in the whole of Latin America. So the potential of that population for this sector is huge. But as with all of the markets in Latin America, again, we work with a local partner. We've spent a lot of time with the local regulators, which has been essential, so that we actually introduce the product to make sure that the product is understood. And that's been, I think, really given us credibility in the market before we expanded and launched elsewhere. So very happy to talk offline a lot more detail on Colombia, but it's certainly a huge market for us.
I think it's worth underlining as well that the positive vibe from Colombia comes from the man who works with local partners. And if there was one point I was going to make, it was that in Colombia you can only work locally. You cannot be in a money business outside Colombia and expect to move money across borders and back, because everyone in the world thinks you're into drug laundering. And it's just a complete stop. You can't deal with a Colombian bank as a foreigner. You don't want to deal with a Colombian bank if you're an American, particularly if you live in Florida, etc. The history of Colombia's drugs and money trade is so strong that only operating locally, which makes sense anyway, works. I can talk a little bit about Panama. I had a brief career as an aerobics teacher there when I was a little bit thinner. Panama too has a checkered history in terms of drug laundering, Mr. Noriega's millions and so on. So it's an area where domestic banks tend to view foreign operators with some suspicion, but it is by no means as closed. And of course there is a split banking sector in Panama where there are onshore banks conducting business with locals, and there are also a large number of offshore banks conducting relatively unregulated business for relatively unregulated people from all over the place. Small population, so there isn't a massive market opportunity in Panama, but as regards doing business with locals, the economy actually works reasonably well. The Balboa is at par with the US dollar. The US dollar is the de facto currency in Panama. And if you can avoid any suspicion that you're saying you're doing one thing in Panama in order to mask doing something else that the American government wouldn't like, whether it's hiding money, avoiding tax, dealing drugs, stolen airplanes, these various things, then Panama is a relatively easy market to work in. Ecuador I also had a brief spell in. And my overriding experience with Ecuador has been, first of all, the government is very protective of its lottery monopoly. Really the only well-established gambling business in Ecuador, aside from a couple of casinos, is the lottery business. Why does that work? Well, because it's a cash-based business. There is a large poor population in Ecuador. Not that many people have much disposable income. And nobody in Ecuador trusts the banks. About 15 years ago, the government of Ecuador was short of money, so it compulsorily took over all foreign currency bank accounts in Ecuador and forced the holders to lend the money to the government for 5 years and then gave it back at the end of the 5 years in local currency. Their local currency still wasn't supported, and they then dollarized the economy. If you have a product to market or sell to the very small but emerging Ecuadorian middle class, they can have international credit cards. It is possible to work with them. But the way goods are distributed and paid for in Ecuador to this very day is largely door to door and in the stores. And I wouldn't be putting my life savings into an Ecuadorian product at this point. I think it's a tough market, and the rewards are potentially very limited.
My name is Peter Nolte. I'm the CEO of the largest multi-vertical online gaming site in Latin America called BetMotion. And we have had a lot of experience with and frustrations with local payments. I'd like just to add a couple comments here that, first of all, Brazil is a completely different country culture-wise and language-wise than all the rest of Latin America. Not only is it different in terms of language and culture, it is much, much larger than all of the rest of Latin America. It represents almost 80% of South America. And one of the comments that I would like to add here is that some of these payment solutions with whom we work with all of them are not translated into Portuguese. So we're talking about the so-called user experience, and we see that lots of Brazilians would like to use the e-wallets, and they cannot do so because of certain restraints with domestic credit cards, etc. But most important of all, because of the user experience. The sites are not translated into Portuguese. And when I speak Portuguese, I don't mean Portugal Portuguese. Brazilian Portuguese is another language. It's not the same language as Portuguese Portuguese. So please, let's translate these sites into Brazilian Portuguese. Let's make these Brazilians use the sites, use the e-wallets. You know, we have to have a good user experience. You know, let's make it easy for them. It's already difficult enough for Brazilians and Latin Americans to make deposits. So you guys are responsible to make this happen. You know, help us out.
I totally do.
I think the problem is compounded by the fact that when we as outsiders go to Brazil and look for local partners, we typically meet well-educated Brazilians who speak beautiful English, and we get the impression that all their customers do too.
Which is not
Nothing
true.
could be further from the truth. Você é brasileiro?
Eu sou brasileiro.
Com todo orgulho.
Yes.
Very good.
And one more thing that I like to add is that every country has a different culture, has a different way of doing business, and has a different way of making deposits. Example, Argentina and Uruguay, people like to make payments in cash. They go to every corner, there's a little habitado or each country has different names, and they like to make payments in cash. They don't like to move their money through their banking systems because they have lots of monies which are not officially registered or whatever, so they like to do payments through cash. So the moment you start talking about boletos or other things, some people don't like to do that. You know? And of course, in Brazil, you work very well with bank transfers and boletos, but other countries like Argentina, they don't like to do bank transfers. You know, you have to find solutions for cash payments. So we would love to be working more and more with the e-wallets. We have all of them on our site. But unfortunately, we've been forced to set up local entities, open up local banks, set up partnerships, and that's what we've been doing. We have local entities in Argentina and Uruguay and Brazil, you name it, you know, which is not our job, which is not our business. This is your business.
Yeah.
Okay? Thank you.
Echoing the point on Uruguay, that's one of the reasons Uruguay's worked so well for us, because cash is the predominant payment method, so totally agree with that. We're not currently live in Brazil, as we said earlier, but when we are, there will be a Brazilian-Portuguese site. I have a Brazilian person who works in my team, so you'll have that commitment from us. Great.
Also Argentina, please.
Yeah, we have that live now as of yesterday, and it's in Spanish.
So you have UCash already in Argentina available for payment. That is very good news, by the way.
And not to understate the importance of culture in Brazil, if you have a call center, you need people that speak with a Rio accent and people that speak with a Sao Paulo accent. because people are not impressed when they get the other one on the line.
I would say at least that you don't speak in Portugal Portuguese.
Absolutely,
Because
yeah.
people don't realize how different these languages are. And it's not good at all for you to approach a Brazilian client with Portuguese text or spoken Portuguese. It's just not appropriate.
Yeah. What are the effective payout mechanisms for the major Latin American countries? If you still got the microphone, how do you pay your affiliates in Brazil?
We try to use bank transfers, basically bank transfers. That is really the best way to pay. And then of course the e-wallets.
The funding to the
e-wallets
wallets
are the best solution really for payouts.
Okay, and Argentina?
Same problem. Usually bank transfers deposited on the bank. We also have an agent system, which is very effective and necessary for some of these locations. So our agent system seems to work very well in Argentina.
Okay. Now, if I'm right, Jens, PaySafe card cannot be used to make a payment to an individual.
No. Up to this date, we're a simple payment mechanism, one way only, meaning we collect cash in the market and you spend it online, and that's what we do. Later on, a month later, 2 weeks later, we settle with the merchant, we take the commission out that we get for the processing, and that's it. So it's very simple, straightforward. However, we see some pressure and lots of demand establishing a payout channel as well, because not just for affiliates, but many businesses do not require payouts, but they do require a refund mechanism, which is basically similar to a payout strategy. So our product has been around for 10 years now, and there are currently projects underway of establishing some functionality that's close to a payout mechanism or refund technology. So another option probably would be to have PaySafe card working with the major wallets, meaning if you have a cash-based system where you can collect money in a market, and you could use these vouchers to make a deposit into one of the e-wallets, you have the P2P functionality and you have the attached payout options as well. It could be a bank transfer, or it could simply be sending the money on from one wallet to another wallet, which could be inside the country but also outside the country. It could have an attached card to it, which could be a national card or an international card. So by going into these kind of corporations between the cash collecting network and the purely online wallets, you open up the limitations you have, and you open up the borders, and you get a lot more functionality. And I think that's what you're going to see in the months and years to come, that there will be a lot of consolidation, but also a lot of cooperation between those existing systems, not just on a local level, but also on a global level and global broader picture. So we already see this happening. We're working on some strategies to cooperate, because we see the demand that a pure one-way payment is nice to have, but it's not solving all the problems of our customers. And that's one of the reasons we're being here today. It's not because we're being a great affiliate payout option today, or payment option, but it's because to learn and understand what the market requires to take payments and make payments. And yeah, so that's what we do.
Thinking ahead in terms of investing in Spanish language sites, Spanish language staff, Spanish language products that make sense to Spanish speakers, leaving out Brazil, which in any event is a Portuguese speaking market, which do you think is the largest potential market of Latin American Spanish speakers in the world? The United States, yeah. If you're looking ahead to what's likely to happen in the next 2 years, now is the time to develop an infrastructure for Latin America, because hopefully in very short order we'll be able to deploy it legally into the United States, and the investment will pay off probably 1,000 times what it ever will in one of the small Andean countries. Go ahead, please. Okay. The question was, to what extent do I or do we think, yeah, the Latino market in the States is exclusively Spanish-speaking as opposed to bilingual? I would venture that the majority of Latin Americans living in the United States have some knowledge of English. but the United States is still a very, very segregated, unhomogenized base, unlike countries like Canada. And the majority of Latinos living in the United States live in communities where they speak their own language. They shop in shops where there are familiar products. If they're extremely successful, of course, they move out to a different area, buy an American car, and pretend they never came from Latin America. That's a fact of life. But the vast majority of people from the South living in North America prefer to deal with their own people for products they are comfortable with in their own language. Does that answer your question?
Paul, may I just
Yeah, of course.
add a couple of things? Just going back to the previous point on payouts. Our own experience of payouts has been, I think, similar to Jens, although UCash can be used as a payout mechanism from merchant sites, so we've integrated that to a number of our partners, so you can pay out to a UCash voucher, which can then in turn be loaded up to a Neteller wallet where Jens used to work, or other e-wallets as well, or prepaid cards. So I wanted to make that point. But I think just coming back to the second point on the US, all of us, I think, are just waiting for the US market to explode, particularly from an iGaming perspective. We're planning for that now, but any planning for the US can't just be an English market plan. It's got to be not just Spanish.
Not just Spanish either, yeah.
English. I mean,
So Korean, Japanese, Chinese. Yeah.
With any entry into the US market, it's almost like entering 50 other markets at the same time. So that is going to take some planning for all of us in this room. That planning needs to start there.
Some one-word answers. If you could only be in one South American country, where would you be, Jens?
Mexico.
Mexico? That's North America, actually.
Fair enough.
Brazil.
Brazil.
And because of the size of the market and the potential. Okay, I'm minded to wrap up the session unless there are any more questions. I think we've covered a fair bit of ground. I'm sure that we're all available after this to take individual questions or talk about the stuff that isn't quite so public if anybody wants to. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.